we need our caregivers for way, way, way longer than other mammals do, right?
Mm-hmm.
So that
Right.
for the first like 10 to 12 years, without adult supervision, we actually won't survive.
Mm-hmm.
And unfortunately, right, there are some um, cases that have been studied around just what happens with folks when there's severe neglect, right? When we don't have that kind of adequate care. So we don't consciously know this when we're young, but we, from an evolutionary standpoint, our beings know this, that in order for me to survive and be safe, I need the love and attention and care from my caregiver. If I don't
Mm-hmm.
have those three things, we inherently know we're not going to be safe.
Welcome to Happy Hour, where we're flipping the script on the traditional happy hour. Instead of winding down at the drink, we're here to talk about what actually makes us happy and learn from society's healers, therapists, coaches, elders, spiritual leaders, and everyone in between. Join us as we dive into stories, insights, and tools that help us grow, heal, and support one another. Whether you're a seeker or a seer, this is for you. I'm Anurag, founder of Happy, and this series will be hosted by myself, along with my co-hosts, Meera and Tess, and we're excited to explore new ways to bring more joy and well-being into our lives. So take a deep breath, and let's dig in.
Welcome to the Happy Hour podcast. In today's episode, Meera is joined by Portia from SANSARA Counseling. Together, they explore Portia's journey as a clinical social worker, emphasizing the importance of emotional safety and the impact of family dynamics on personal growth. They also discuss the innovative approach of experiential therapy. Portia and Meera offer profound insights into how understanding our past can lead to meaningful connections and authentic living. And lastly, don't forget to like and subscribe.
Hi, Portia. So
Hello.
thanks again for chatting. And we're super excited to have you on the Happy Hour podcast. First, I just thought we would start off. I would just love to learn a little bit more about who you are and why you decided to go into therapy, and just a little bit more about your background. How did you get into this area of discipline?
Yeah, so I started probably at a very young age, realizing lots of things about just myself and my family dynamics. And I just had a deep yearning to understand, why are people the way that they are? How do they show up in relationships? What does it relate to? I think I always had a deeper understanding that there's some causal reasons for why disconnection takes place, right?
Okay.
Um, and so that was, I think, something that from a very, very young age, I was, very aware of and picked up on. And I think I was 8 when I thought, okay, I'm going to be a psychologist and
Wow.
and so
Wow.
I deviated a little bit. I'm a social worker and not a psychologist, which is very much the right fit for me. But um,
Wow, that's very interesting. Okay.
yeah,
And so then so I'm sorry, you said you're a social worker, not a psychologist?
yes, yeah. So
Okay.
I have my master's in social work, so I'm a clinical social worker. And the main difference, one of the reasons I ended up kind of picking social work over psychology, is because social work really adopts that systemic lens onto folks. So when we're looking at a person, when we're working to support them on their mental health and accompanying them through life, we're really looking at them in the environmental context that they come from, are born from, grew up in, and are currently navigating. So that just felt like such a, how can we talk about someone's psychology without kind of looking at these bigger layers of where a
Sure.
person is coming from and what their contextual points of reference are.
Of course.
And so, and then of course, social work has that social justice component to it.
Yeah.
And we social workers kind of describe that, it's less of a profession for us and it's more of an identity. And I think,
1,000%.
yeah, for me, that's felt just really true. So I feel very grateful that I found social work.
That's amazing. Yeah, I didn't actually get to share a little bit about my background with you, but I used to be an international human rights lawyer.
Oh,
I did a lot of my work in law, so I identify a lot with like your experience with social work and social justice, and just understanding the whole contextual picture when assessing an
mhm.
individual and understanding different people from different backgrounds. And so um, it's interesting because and I understand like you've lived in a lot of different countries as well, and traveled and are interested in different languages, and it's just interesting how around the world contexts and issues are so different versus how they present here in America. And so I'd love to chat a little bit more about those things later, but first I'd love to hear a little bit more about like your social work practice and what you specifically do, and specifically the types of people that you work with and some of the issues that come up for you.
Totally, yeah. So I have a therapy and consulting practice. In the therapy arm of my practice, I work with adults, individuals, and couples.
Okay.
And so a lot of what I'm working with folks around is complex trauma. So a lot of folks who are coming to see me have some sort of trauma history, either from when they were young, or young adults. A
Okay.
lot of folks have just certain attachment wounds, how they related to their caretakers, what it was like to kind of grow up in a home. I work with a lot of first generation immigrants. So just kind of having that background of maybe some migration, right, involved either through their story or their parents' story or their grandparents' story.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, so there's, tends to be some complex dynamics that exist within that can lead to, um, unfortunately growing up not always getting all of our needs met, right? When there's a
Yeah.
little more of a incentive um, to secure financial stability, right? To secure housing, to secure
Right. First order
assimilation,
priority.
to make sure things are okay for us in a new country, right? So
Right.
um, a lot of the folks that I see, end up feeling like, well, in some way, shape, or form as an adult, I'm having a hard time connecting with myself. I have a hard time being with myself, sitting in my hard feelings. And then I also have a hard time connecting with other people.
Hmm.
So a lot of folks that are coming in to see me are really wanting to better understand themselves so that they can ultimately move towards meaningful connection with others.
Sure.
And maybe some of how they're showing up in the world around them because of where they come from and how they were raised
Right.
is making that kind of challenging.
I
Uh,
see.
so
Where do
that's,
you
yeah, go for it.
I was gonna say, where do you typically start when someone has no idea who they are or how to like rebuild their own identity from scratch?
Yeah.
Where do you typically start with someone like that?
Well, if we think about kind of what the therapeutic process looks like, it often begins with an intake. So it's basically an assessment that in my practice tends to last maybe around 2 sessions, where we're just kind of getting to know someone and their background, right? So
Sure.
we're talking both about symptoms of mental health, but then we're also talking a little bit about where they come from, what the home was like for them when they were young, what their relationship was like with the primary caregivers that were present, right? And with their siblings as well. Um, what their immigration story is if they have one.
Hmm.
So a lot of the times if someone has no idea where to start, they've never been to therapy before, they're coming to see me as an adult, maybe for the first time entering into a therapy relationship. A lot of what I'm doing is kind of getting that information because, of course, it's helpful for me. And as we're talking about it, I kind of start to point and illuminate certain things for them so they can start to see their own upbringing in maybe a little bit of a different sort of a way. And
Okay.
it's not in a way of castigating parents or blaming, right? But it's in a way of, oh, I didn't realize that that might have had a really big impact on me and might
Hmm.
actually, to some extent, be playing out in some of my adult relationships with other people.
Understood. Understood. And do you think so then the most of the clients that you see, like what are, without obviously breaking confidentiality, what are some of the current trends that you're seeing overall, like within your own specific client base?
Yeah. I think there's a lot of difficulty in being my authentic self, right?
Hmm.
I think that's something that's probably a trend I see. I can think about like almost for probably all of my clients in some way,
Okay.
shape, or form. Especially with my individuals. With couples, it's maybe slightly different. But yeah, there's a trend of feeling like me being me doesn't feel safe enough. I worry I might not be accepted. I feel shame over who and how I am, not because I consciously even necessarily feel shame, but because maybe something about how I grew up, I wasn't always able to express myself in that way, or expressing myself in that way wasn't always a thing that was welcome. So I had to learn certain adaptive strategies of how to be and show up in the world that are maybe not actually in line with my authentic self. Um, and so there's like an entrapment that can take place, right? If it feels like, well, I'm not
Sure.
making meaningful connections with other people. I'm also not totally fully showing up as myself. I don't even know what it would be like to kind of step into that. There's a lot of barriers to entry to kind of showing up more authentically, and then
Hmm.
maybe kind of making those more meaningful connections, right? Because it's
Sure.
it's hard to meaningfully connect with other people if it feels like we're not showing up as ourselves, right?
Of course. Of course. Does it feel like, I mean, I know that this is a very generic, not in a generic way specifically, but is there or are there certain factors that you have found that contribute to that for someone growing up? Are there certain um,
Mhm.
family models or practices, or even like symptoms that contribute? Because I feel like in our world today, that is it's an overall trend that is probably not just being seen in your practice, but it's just being seen across our country as well, that people not being able to show up as who they are authentically. And I'm just
Yeah,
wondering if there are specific factors in either these family systems or environmental factors that contribute to that on like a larger scale level that we could potentially solve for.
totally, totally. I mean, a lot of it connects back to how our caretakers treated our emotions, right, when we were
Hmm.
young kids. Because, of course, I mean, we are emotional beings who occasionally think, right, not the other way around. And so when we're young kids, especially, there's no hiding that. There's no negating it. There's no, like, that's just the reality of it, right? And you mentioned that you have some kiddos, so you probably see that happen in real time, right?
Yeah.
Um, yeah.
It,
And so it's
yeah.
like, yeah, there's no, if your kiddo's upset or sad, and especially within a certain age, frame, you're going to know exactly what's happening for them. There's no poker face that exists for really young
Right.
kids.
Right.
So a lot of it is connected to, well, how did my parent greet those emotions? And what was the extent to which my needs were met when I was emotionally distressed, right?
Hmm.
So if there was a lot of unpredictability, like sometimes maybe they would respond well and I would get my needs met. Sometimes they wouldn't respond well and I wouldn't get my needs met. What happens is that in a young body, we start to then figure out how to predict needs getting met.
Hmm.
So to give you an example, it might be like, oh, well, my needs would only really get met if I would escalate to a certain extent.
Hmm.
So maybe I learned like from a really young age that in order to be seen and in order for my needs to get met and to ensure like my survival, right? Um, I would need to be pretty loud and pretty distressed.
Hmm.
And so what that might present and look like as an adult is like someone who's maybe pretty anxiously attached, who can get dysregulated really easily, someone who like we would categorize as like the struggling one, right? So it's like
Sure.
they don't have it together. Like we might see them like, okay, why can't you get your life together, or get your stuff together? It's like, oh, well, maybe when they were really young, that was actually how they got love, care, and attention, was
Hmm.
if they were in a lot of distress,
Hmm. Got
right?
it.
So a lot of it is just what were my parents' capacity for their emotions, and then by extension my emotions,
Hmm.
and then did I get my needs met in those moments where it was hard for me, right? It was emotionally distressing in some way.
And would you say, like, when you speak about needs, are these mostly like primal needs, or are they mostly like needs based off of like preferences and things that I mean, kids, like you said, like, kids sometimes have needs, sometimes, they have needs for certain things, and then they have
Yeah,
wants, right? And there's
right.
things that are obviously need to be protected, and they need to feel a sense of safety for um
Yes.
imminence of danger or unsafe
Yes.
situations. But then there's
Yeah.
also situations where, as first generation immigrants, they have a very different approach to, dealing with certain situations and emotions. And a lot of it is often described as dismissive, right? They
Yes.
don't really care to understand a child's emotional inclinations or why they might do certain things. And so,
Mhm.
um, typically, like you stated that you work with a lot of clients who actually have past trauma, and so I'm assuming those are related to traumatic experiences where they were in some sense of danger or a level of safety that they could not uh, personally escape from.
Yeah, yeah. So this is a great question, and there's nuance here that I think not a lot of people are aware of, and so it's I think a really helpful question to better understand what is safety actually when we're really young growing up, right? And
Right.
so to answer your question, when I'm referring to needs getting met, what I'm essentially referring to is safety.
Okay.
Um, and there's a huge emotional component to safety that I think not a lot of us, and especially like growing up in kind of certain generations, like I'm thinking about my parents and my parents' parents. It's like I don't think there's a lot of awareness over what emotional safety is and just how important it is.
Right.
So let's utilize an example kind of to better understand this component of emotional safety and how it impacts us as young kids and then as emerging adults.
Yeah.
So thinking about someone who I like to use this example, like, okay, they're getting lost at Costco, right? So that we
Okay.
probably all have some experience of
Yeah.
this, of
Yeah.
like a 4 or 5, 6 year old looking around, all of a sudden mom's not there, right?
Yeah.
When we think about human beings as mammals are pretty unique in many ways, but one of the ways in which we're unique is that we need our caregivers for way, way, way longer than other mammals do, right?
Hmm.
So that
Right.
for the first like 10 to 12 years, without adult supervision, we actually won't survive.
Hmm.
And unfortunately, right, there are some um, cases that have been studied around just what happens with folks when there's severe neglect, right? When we don't have that kind of adequate care. So we don't consciously know this when we're young, but we from an evolutionary standpoint, our beings know this, that in order for me to survive and be safe, I need the love and attention and care from my caregiver. If I don't
Hmm.
have those 3 things, we inherently know we're not gonna be safe, right?
Hmm.
So if we think about like a little kiddo, all of a sudden she looks up, okay, mom's not there anymore.
Hmm.
And kiddo starts to panic, doesn't really know what to do, right? Because
Right.
now they know, oh, I'm no longer safe.
Hmm.
Not because anything bad is necessarily even happening to them, right?
Yeah. They're just
What yeah, like, people might be
unattached
nice to
from
them or might be trying to
sure.
help them find some but they know from a place, "Oh, my love, attention, and care has gone away, and I need to get that back." That's really important, right? This is how we're motivated intrinsically, right, from an evolutionary perspective. So, if and when I finally reunite with mom, probably what most of us might need is we need a little bit of, like, a come down from that, because that was a really scary thing that happened. And so we might be crying a little bit, we might be extra clingy to mom, and this is just a come down experience. This is really normal and
Right.
natural. It's not no signifier of, like, a mental health issue, right? This is just, like, how we
Right, it's a
are
natural
normally.
response to our
Yes,
emotion of being really scared and just saying,
totally.
"Oh, you were gone, but now I really need to be close to you to ensure that you are not
Yes,
gonna leave me or be aware." And ironically, that's
exactly.
something very similar happened where we were on the plane. We were just getting back from Brazil. We just got back on Friday, and my kiddos went into the pilots, quarters, and my younger one and my older one were both there. And I casually mentioned, I was like, okay, we're gonna go find our seats. You guys stay and hang out. And one of them, probably my younger one, I don't think heard me. So they were gone for 20 minutes. My older one's a massive chatterbox, so she was just chatting away. I was like, all right, whatever. And then my younger one came back and she was like crying. And after
Mhm.
like everyone had boarded, and she was like, I thought you left. Where did you go? And I was like, no, I was on the plane. Like I've told you I was
Totally.
going down the plane. Where else would I go? I'm not gonna leave you. And so,
Yeah,
but it was a very similar dynamic that just happened. So continue your story, but it's obviously, I think most parents can resonate with something like this
yes,
happening at some point.
totally.
um,
Yeah,
it's a very common occurrence that either
yes,
I lost my child or I left them briefly or something happened. It's not full-blown trauma, to your point. It's not neglect or anything. It's just there was a scary experience that happened, and now we have to
exactly, exactly.
attend to that experience.
Yeah, totally. So when we think about emotional safety, so much of emotional safety is how do we attend, exactly to your point, how do we attend to that scary experience that happened for them? Even though that, and this is what's a really important signifier, that in and of itself might not have actually been marked as a traumatic event for your kiddo.
Right.
And it could be based off of how parent responds. So this is why it's so important to think about how are parents attuning to children's emotions, because that's what can actually lead to the trauma, not even necessarily the event in and of itself. Certain events, certainly, right? So like abuse of all kinds and all forms can lead to then trauma, right? Certain
Yeah, of
really
course.
hard or scary or like um, really intense elevated stress can definitely lead to trauma. Other scary things that have the potential can be really offset by how parents respond to their kids. So when we're talking about emotional safety, it would be something like, man, yeah, that was really scary for you, huh? You thought I was gone, right? And really working to meet your child in that sort of reactive way without diminishing or suppressing their feelings.
Hmm.
So most of us were parented in a get over it, keep it moving, keep it pushing sort of a way. So if
Hmm.
I was that little girl lost at the supermarket and I finally found mom and there's relief, but then there's still distress, right?
Hmm.
Because a rupture has taken place and there's a need for repair. I might need to be extra clingy. I might need mom to soothe me. And if mom's not soothing me in that moment, right, or dad's not soothing me in that moment, then what's happened is, oh, my feelings here that were actually really normal and natural response at that
Sure.
developmental stage were actually not okay by my caretaker.
Hmm.
And that's an emotional need in this case, a safety-based need that has not gotten met. And so I think a lot of like parents of immigrants, I mean, my guess is probably both of our parents, maybe to some extent. I'm making assumptions here,
Yeah.
but children of immigrants, it's like they think, well, I gave you food, you always
Hmm.
had clothes to wear, you had good
Hmm.
shelter, you went to school, so I
Hmm.
did a really good job.
Hmm.
And the answer is, well, yes, and
Hmm.
how much were my emotional needs attended to? And if there wasn't a lot of space for my emotional needs, then it's really, unfortunately, like a short highway into some experiences like attachment wounds, like not feeling totally safe or comfortable showing up authentically, like having a hard time being vulnerable with others.
Right. It's a really interesting distinction, and I think it's very complex because you have, this whole generation, and I'm speaking mostly from like an immigrant standpoint, right? Like you have this immigrant generation that was taught to dismiss their emotional needs because, the true safety for them depended on their livelihood. They had to provide, they had to escape like often persecuted situations. They had to grew up in like impoverished conditions, and you hear the stories from at least like our parents of like, well, I walked like 2 miles in the snow or on the dirt road to
Mhm.
get to school and
Totally.
things like that, right? And they don't have this inclination towards emotional safety for them. It was not something that was drilled down into them because they were just purely looking to survive and provide based off of like
Yeah.
the values that their parents had for them,
Yeah.
right? And then we have this new distinction with like obviously a new generation of like this concept of emotional safety. And you have emotional safety where your needs absolutely have to be met from a safety perspective. If you're lost, then you do need the comfort of a parent to say you're okay, you're safe, everything's okay. Um, and I think sometimes we we there's a healthy balance between both of those worlds, between making sure that people are not overly dependent on their needs to create that emotional safety, but then also making sure that their needs are validated in that way. Because I wonder, does having more emotional safety create more of a need for that, like, in the future to constantly have your needs met when that might not always be realistically possible?
Yeah, I think you're speaking on again a common misconception. I love these questions because I think we get to kind of debunk some myths here together.
Yeah.
Um, I think a lot of people worry maybe, and I don't know if this is maybe the subtext of like, oh, am I making my kids soft? Am I not preparing them for the real world? Am I not preparing them to maybe be resilient in the face of strife and struggle if I'm giving intending to them in this way?
Mhm,
And the answer, and we know this from a neurobiology perspective, is absolutely not. So when we're working to meet the emotional needs of our like we can talk about our kids, right, but we can even just talk about like our partners, our friends, our colleagues, our clients, right, the people that we're working with. When we're working to meet those emotional needs, what we're doing is we're actually creating more integration within
mhm,
their brain, and with more integration, it leads to more creativity with problem solving, more nuance of looking and perspective taking. So it actually leads to way more resilience. We
mhm,
have access to all parts of our brains when we're looking at things that have gone wrong. When we're in a reactive place from maybe not having gotten our emotional needs met, and then kind of that script has continued throughout because we haven't learned a different way, we're less
mhm,
resilient because we have less access to different parts of our brain. So
mhm,
while it is true that to some extent, I'm sure you've heard this from older generations. It's like, oh, all that emotion stuff was a luxury we couldn't afford.
mhm,
And I think the truth of it is like, well, that was a reality for folks who had greater safety needs, right?
mhm.
It goes back to that kind of hierarchy of needs,
Hierarchy,
right?
of course.
Yeah, and so it's like, well, what this newer generation and newer generations are being afforded is greater perceived sense of safety on some of those maybe more baseline levels of
Mhm,
needs. What we're called upon to do now is how can we increase that so we can have more integrated folks in the world, right?
yeah,
What does more integration lead to? It leads to more cooperation, more nuance, more connectivity, more care, more support,
mhm.
right? If we think about like if the people in power right now had a little bit more brain integration, what would the world look like? Probably a lot better, right?
There's definitely, I mean, I think that the need for empathy, for kindness, for compassion, um, to everyone is definitely something that we all as humans need more of.
Yeah.
The world is not, the world is a great place and it's an unforgiving place as well.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
so both are necessary. And to that point, the only thing that I think we can do as humans who want to see other humans is to apply that sense of empathy and compassion. And I think that's where your sense of validation for those experiences for different people who undergo them are incredibly important to be able
Yeah.
to make sure they feel that their feelings are protected.
Totally, totally,
And
and it's
so,
again yeah, go for it.
right, go ahead. No, go ahead.
Well, it's second nature to folks who got those needs met, right? And for
Yeah.
folks who didn't get those needs met, it's like not only is it hard for them to do with others, it's really hard for them to do it within themselves.
Hmm.
Right? And so a lot of us are become we become like a part of a prison of our own making, right? Where we're pulling ourselves in these ways, because it feels really scary to. We don't have that safe grounding that we can actually go out and live authentically and be more open and be more vulnerable because that wasn't our experience growing up.
Right. Right. And speaking of which, when you talk about, a lot of like the resilience that people overcome or the trauma that they're overcoming in your practice specifically, you deal with a lot more experiential therapy than you do with talk therapy, correct?
Yeah. Mm.
And so, um, for people who are not familiar, how do you define experiential therapy, and what does that mean, and how is that different than talk therapy in
Yeah.
your practice?
Yeah. So experiential therapy, we can kind of think about, maybe a lot of us know mindfulness or at least have heard of the term mindfulness.
Uh-huh.
And so we can think about experiential therapy kind of like a mindful approach to therapy. And
Okay.
basically, what that means is it's rather than talking about or analyzing an experience with my therapist in talk therapy, I'm actually feeling and activating the experience.
I
And
see.
my therapist is helping guide me into a contained way of being in the experience.
Got
Because
it.
if it doesn't feel safe for us to go into the experience, we're not going to go into it, right? We're going to have all sorts of other things that might help take us out of it.
Right.
Therapy is creating a container in and of itself. And when we have good trust in that space with the person that's guiding us through it, then we can actually, it's basically like we're accessing different parts of our brain. So if
Okay.
we think about like talk therapy, what is talk therapy? It's like me kind of talking about some experiences like lower parts of my brain are having, right? So like,
Sure.
oh, I was really upset the other day when this happened, and I think I was upset because of XYZ.
Sure.
The reality is like this is the meaning making center, the prefrontal cortex of our brain. We're telling the stories we have access to from our conscious brain. So I think I'm this way because of XYZ. Well, that could be true. That could be part of the story. That could not be it. We don't know because this is what we got access to, right? It's the stories we've made up and what we've told ourselves over and over again about how or why I am the way I am.
Right.
Sometimes in talk therapy, we have access to like our limbic brain, right? So
Hmm.
we can, our subcortical brain, we can feel the feeling and it's like, oh yeah, that was annoying. And I think it's annoying because of XYZ,
Yeah.
right? What experiential therapy is doing is like, okay, talk about a thing, start to feel the thing. And then rather than going back up to analyze why you think you're feeling the thing, can we be more in the experience into lower parts of the brain, like kind of getting into the midbrain, the brain stem, where
Hmm.
so many like knowings are housed of the way the world works around us, right?
Sure.
That we don't have conscious access to.
Okay.
Because if we think about like just the filtering system of the brain for a minute, just like some brain psychoeducation here, the brain stem can process 9 billion bits of information per minute.
Wow.
Our prefrontal cortex can process about 60 bits of information.
Okay.
So think about the filtering system that takes place,
Right.
right? To filter that into just like what is utmost important right now that I can report on
Yeah.
versus all of the connective tissue that maybe relates to this thing beneath it.
Right.
So when we're in experiential work and the experience of it, what we're doing is we're tapping into kind of lower parts of our brain to
Wow.
get access to more information about, wait, so why is this hard for you?
Hmm.
Wait, so what about this is actually important? And what did you learn about this experience? We might think we know. Sometimes we don't. Sometimes we're
Right.
like, I have no idea.
Yeah.
So experiential therapy is helping to kind of gain access to more of those bits of information that we processed when we were young.
Wow. Wow. And what reaction does the client have going through this sort of process? I can imagine with more access to that type of information, it would be
Yeah.
transformational.
Yeah, well, it tends to be experiential therapy tends to be more activating in general. And so that's why when we're doing experiential work, we're also bringing a good amount of regulation into the mix as needed,
Hmm.
because some of these things might be too hard or too activating in the moment, right? So it might not feel really supportive to like get into this thing. I know I might not be ready to uncover it because I might not have adequate support in place to hold it well. right? It might lead to me spiraling. So we
Right.
do it in a contained way that's increasing regulation as we need, because this work, like you're saying, it's pretty activating.
Yeah.
Is it transformational? 100%.
Uh,
Is it hard to do? Yes. So a lot of
mhm.
my clients are, when we're doing this work in therapy that's more experiential, they're really feeling their feelings,
Of
right?
course.
So they're gaining capacity to feel their feelings more, to identify their feelings more. And while that's so great for our long-term work, it can also be kind of disarming for folks, right? Because they're not really used to doing that. They weren't taught how to do that.
Yeah. And it's overwhelming.
Yeah.
It's overwhelming
Yeah,
to
it can feel
go
kind of scary. Yeah.
exactly, to activate a part of your mind that you've already experienced as traumatic and to go back to that place and relive those moments again. I would think from that standpoint, it would be incredibly challenging for
Yes.
people to do that
Yeah.
and overwhelming.
Yeah. 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 So
So
I think it's important to have informed consent around, what experiential therapy is, and what it will lead to. And we really titrate experiential therapy based off of what their systems are showing us. So if their system is showing us, oh, I only need a tiny amount of regulation, I'm good. Okay, then we do those kind of tiny moments, or sorry, tiny activation, and then we bring in that regulation. Some of us have more capacity for that, some of us have less capacity for that. So we
Mhm.
go at it at their pace.
Yes.
And one of the things that's so beneficial to experiential work is that it actually leads to lasting change in the brain. So, what we know about how the brain changes is that we know some of these neural networks that hold certain knowings that make the world harder for us, or make us engage in ways that aren't values aligned, they actually need to be open and active in order for them to change. So when
Mhm.
we're in the experiential work, we're opening them up so that they can maybe take in and process some new information. So it's a lot of like, how is the brain reprocessing information? Experiential work is going to get at that a lot quicker, a lot faster, and a lot more efficiently than talk therapy will. Talk therapy
Wow.
can and does, but it can take a lot longer, and sometimes it's hard if we're just staying in this arena of experience when the thing that needs to be changed is maybe kind of a little bit farther down.
Just deeper down. And how
Yeah.
how does that work when you apply it back to integration into everyday life, and everyday
Yeah.
experiences? How do you ensure
Yeah.
that that process stays with that client for a longer period of time?
Yeah. Well, with when a neural network opens and maybe reprocesses or takes in new information, clients will see it. So we won't necessarily. It's called memory reconsolidation, right? That's kind of what we're working at in therapy, if and when it's appropriate to do it. So maybe I learned something about my worth as a little kid that's just not the full story, not actually true about me, but maybe was a result of my circumstances. So
Right.
that might need to
Plants a
be
seed.
reprocessed, right?
Right.
And if it's reprocessed in experiential work, we'll know the next time we see each other, because they'll report back. Oh yeah, this thing that's always been really hard for me. Like I can never open up around this thing, and actually it was kind of easy to do it.
Wow.
So when the brain takes in that new information and reprocesses, you kind of start to see the benefit of it, of just like
Yeah.
how that's a more integrated version of you, right? A more integrated part kind of comes up.
Yeah.
So it's incredible to see just like how things can really shift from
Yeah.
doing some of this kind of deeper reprocessing work.
That's wonderful. That's really inspiring and, a very alternate way of exploring all the different types of ways that you as a person can overcome a lot of these difficult traumas or challenging situations.
Yeah, yeah, we're working to create that deeper, more lasting change with the experiential work that we do. Because again, we can have a lot of awareness over something. We can know we do this thing. We can know where it comes from. It doesn't necessarily lead to change, unfortunately.
Yeah.
I wish it were that easy, and
Yeah.
it's proven to not be, right?
Yeah,
Yeah.
definitely. It takes a lot of factors combined to be able to holistically change like an entire perception of yourself. And that's why we are constantly learning as humans and we're constantly evolving. And the more information we have, the more access to different pathways that we have and different perspectives that we have, the more we can grow and change too. So that's
Exactly.
that's truly wonderful. Well, thank you so much for being on the podcast. We really appreciate it. Is there anything else that you would like to share or that we didn't cover that you'd like to talk about?
I maybe will just share that in addition to counseling, I do some consulting work in my practice as well.
Okay.
So I work with organizations that are interested in building more workplace connection and a safer culture to be in connection and be at work and work on deliverables and have workplaces feel like sustainable places to inhabit and be a part of.
Okay, great.
So if folks are, interested in kind of learning more about that too, they can check out my website.
Okay, perfect. And where can we find you?
Yeah, it's Sansara Counseling, SANSARA counseling.com.
Okay, perfect. Well, thank you again so much for the time,
Thanks so
Portia. We
much.
really enjoyed our conversation, and
Yeah,
we hope to chat again soon.
awesome. Yeah, I appreciate your time. It was a great conversation.
Thank you so much for joining us for happy hour. We hope you walked away having learned something and feeling a little less alone on the journey. If you liked what you heard, it would mean so much to us if you subscribe. You can be notified every time we have a new episode. To learn more about what we are doing at HPY, go to thinkhpy.com. Until next time, we hope you feel heard. Take care.